Welcome to another edition of Section 5 Live for AJ Feldman. I am Alexa Ross. We are almost at sectionals next week.
Yeah, it seems like the regular season just started, which it just did, and now we have sectionals all next week. Literally all of the sectionals, only 8 teams making the sectional tournament in each bracket, every sport for your hockey and for your basketball, which is definitely different than years past and is going to create some really interesting opportunities these next week.
We'll talk a little bit about some bracket breakers. I certainly will. I don't know if you will, but I think that it provides the opportunity for a lot of movement. We could see some really fun upsets. So I am looking forward to seeing what this next week brings and the stacked week of coverage.
Yeah, and with that, only 8 teams, we're going to get some really good games right away. Those 1 versus 8s might even be, really good games. And for today, tomorrow, and on Saturday, right at that bubble of 8, 9, 10, especially in the hockey, if you look at the hockey brackets, they're really tight at the bottom of there, where you still have some really quality teams who might miss out. So certainly a unique thing that we have going on this year, but I think it's going to be really exciting.
I completely agree with you, and I think I'm looking at that A1 bracket very closely, especially after seeing what happened tonight with Gates and Victor. So we will, or double A, excuse me. So we will have to see what, that could be blown wide open too.
Definitely. Well, it is time to get right to the coverage. We have got our teams of the week coming up who made the biggest impressions to us this week. We start with boys basketball, and I have got to spotlight the CG Finney boys. They are on a 10-game winning streak right now. On Friday, they knocked off North Star, handing North Star their first loss of the season, an 83-70 defeat. And on Monday, they beat Rochester Prep, who was coming in on a 5-game winning streak. This team, it's Marcus Robinson's team. There's no question about that. He just hit his 2,000th point in that game against North Star, doing it as just a sophomore, 10th player in Section 5 history to hit 2,000 at any grade. And the rest of the team, it's certainly, a step down. Matt Magliato, he can shoot, providing some secondary scoring. Nick Pasquantonio, he can provide some offensive threat too. But that team is Marcus Robinson's team, and then when you watch him play, it is just a full-out assault. When you're going against him, it is just nonstop. He is driving at you the entire game. It is exhausting, and I think if they're going to go far in the sectional tournament, that's what they're going to do. They do it very well. He just runs everywhere. He's a freight train this year. He really bulked up in the offseason. And in that bracket, you've got World of Inquiries, a very good team. You've got North Star, you've got Finney. Also some really small gyms. So that fast break, that one-man fast break, it almost goes the length of the court in about 3 seconds. So Finney's going to be a really tough team next week in the playoffs.
You can feel the air rushing on that fast break. My team of the week is leadership. Just like how AJ was talking about Marcus Robinson, this is Sean Smith and Mo McKitty, 2 guys who you hear a lot about when you talk Section 5 boys basketball. On Monday, they combined for 95 points. Yes, 9-5. And last night, they combined for 41 on their senior night. They beat McQuaid 80-76. They upset East. So obviously, this is one that just, it just shows what they can do. The seniors led the way on senior night, which is always fun to see. 77 of those 80 points were from those guys who were recognized. They have 3 losses on the year. They were swept by East, and they lost to the Park School, who is one of the top teams in the state. East also lost to them, so that's not anything that we're too concerned about. They are 4th in the A1 bracket, so they could definitely be a possible upset come sectionals.
Yeah, playoff time is all about the point guards. And when you've got Mo McKinney, that's a good person to bet on, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's fun to see how he and Sean play off of each other. I think it's a team that they have all been playing together for a really long time, and because of that, you see what they all can do and how they, they read the court so well. Yeah,
definitely. And they brought in some pieces through transfer in the offseason. That's really meshing well with, the old hats there at leadership, the new players coming in, so it's really working out pretty well for them so far this season.
Absolutely. And now we take a look into our girls' teams of the week. AJ, who do you got for me?
I have the Gates Chi-Li Spartans. They are on a 5-game winning streak. And in that winning streak, they are beating some quality teams that knocked them off earlier in the season, redeeming 2 of their 3 losses so far this year. Last Thursday, they topped Schrader's 62-52. They beat Gates Chi-Li in the opener. And on Tuesday, they beat Fairport by 9 points. They beat them earlier in February. So they are learning from their mistakes, clearly. They're finding their groove at the right time. Miriam Abizam, obviously a great senior. She just picked up her 1,000th career point against Hilton on Saturday. She's obviously the engine of their team, but Tara Eccles is doing some great things right there. as a junior, able to work through traffic, create her own shot, kind of get around in the paint, find some spots. She does a great job of doing that. Their only loss of the season that we haven't mentioned so far is a 6-point loss to Bishop Kearney. So very competitive with the top team in that bracket, Bishop Kearney, of course. So we will see if they get that rematch in the sectional tournament, and we will see if they will be able to knock them off when that comes.
I'm going to talk about another team that just got their first loss of the year. East Rochester, they are dominating Class C1. They have only one loss, and it was to Mercy, a AA team. They're in C1, so it's not too bad. Last two games, they won by a combined 84 points, 58 over Sodus and 26 over Gananda. They have girls who can shoot, they can block, they have height on their side, and it's nice to see Zoe Zoot, Sam Lewis, Lily Funk. They all average at least 11.5 points per game, but that's on the lower end. But you would think when you have 3 of your starting 5 bringing in those kinds of numbers, it all works out. And Lewis, she earned her 1,000th point honors versus Sodus earlier this week.
And then certainly something you got to watch in that Class A bracket, Pittsford Mendon, they just knocked off Penfield, who, that was my game to watch. So we don't know who can beat Pittsford Mendon, if anybody could beat Pittsford Mendon. So they're certainly, you know, a dominating team as always, and they'll be tough come playoff time in that Class A bracket.
It is a fun year to be an East Rochester student athlete, that's for sure.
Well, we are going from the hardwood to the ice as we take a look at our hockey team of the week, and we have picked Irondequoit coming into tonight at 8-1-1 on the season. They were riding a 5-game winning streak. They did lose tonight, so we did jinx them. It's going to happen eventually. We're sorry, guys. But coming into tonight, great things from their scoring threats. Bryce, the Lydier, 13 goals, 10 assists on the year. He had a hat trick on Tuesday to knock off Spencerport. And Leo Letta as a defenseman, 7 goals, 16 assists. I watched him score a hat trick against Brockport. And it took a long time for me to realize he was a defenseman just with the moves that he had and with the offensive prowess he was possessing from the blue line. That's definitely a threat that most people don't have there on the defensive side. And
they have a lot of threats, really. Jordan Flynn and Eli Velpeck with 8 and 7 goals each, rounding out their top scorers. So we have a good-looking, well-rounded team. It doesn't matter what line they're on, they are getting points. Rick Jafrida, 200th career win Thursday against Brockport, and this team is currently on top of Class B, which is, again, another incredibly competitive bracket.
Yeah, Webster Thomas, you know, the sectional champs from last year, saw them take care of business against Webster Schrader. That was a pretty dominating lockdown win against Schrader in a pretty heated rivalry matchup where kind of really wasn't that much of a game because Thomas controlled it that well. So that's going to be a team to watch. There's a bunch of teams in Class B that we will have to see how things all shake out come next week. It's the playoffs. It's 1 week. We have 1 week left, and I will talk a little bit about one of those games later on in the show because it is my game to watch. But now we're going to switch our attention to football. Yeah, football. It's here. It has officially begun. Football, volleyball, competitive cheerleading, they're back. Yeah, it's weird to be talking football in March, but that's this year for us. I was out there for day 1 of high school football practice. It was definitely not August, unfortunately. It was cold, it was windy, it was below freezing. Had to get out the long johns to go out to football practice, but you know, that's just what you do. And that's what you do in a year like this where we weren't sure if we were going to have a football season, and certainly all the players out there that I talked to, they were just happy to be back out on the field.
I feel bad for anybody who can't feel how we feel right now, and I feel incredible.
It's a feeling that many around Section 5 never thought they were going to get.
With the COVID and everything going on, I didn't think we was really going to have a season, but I'm just glad to be back out here. My senior year. Justice James figured he'd put on his pants for the very last time after the fall season was postponed.
It broke my heart, and at first I was like, you know, it's a little unfair, but I understand. I suppose I understand, and we're out here now.
His head coach Stephen Leon was up at 2:30 this morning with excitement and says that the season finally being here is great for his players' mental health.
Oh, yeah. For a long time, we're trying to keep them engaged by saying, you know, we could have a season, we've got to get involved, and it's been hard. But when it's finally been greenlit and this is actually a tangible thing to be able to hook kids back into, the lift that it gave everybody was tremendous.
You can't take it for granted. You can get taken away from you just like that. We learned that last year, and we just want to live in the moment and just enjoy being around each other.
Certainly a great sight there at Brighton at East. All throughout Section 5, you know, you saw it on Twitter, you saw it on social media, everybody posting their first day back at practice for a first time in a very long time. Great to see for those kids to get out there. And it's just great to have football back at a different time, but it's definitely going to be unusual. It's going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be fun to watch nonetheless.
And it's going to be even weirder because when you think about high school football, you think about Friday Night Lights. It's the first thing you think. But this year, things are going to be a little bit different as we look at the section. How and when they'll compete is completely different than those past years. The first 5 weeks of the season, they will be all just about practice. This is the first 2 weeks of play. That's business as usual, Friday night and Saturday games. But after that, things switch. Teams will play every 6 days. That's in an effort to get in as many games as possible and to have some added flexibility.
After 5 weeks of the focus being on practices, we then were able to reduce the number of days down in between games to help with that maximizing of contests for all. We are not down to the minimum. The minimum is 4 nights rest. We chose to get that extra day of that 5th day just to help kind of plan the season out and also to give us 1 day of wiggle room should something happen, whether it's COVID related or weather related.
Scott Barker told me, you know, we all know about March snowstorms. That's why you have to build in that extra day. And that was one of the biggest things in his thoughts. He met with the state football committee. They all kind of bounced ideas off of each other. This was one of the ones that was brought to the table, and he thought that it would be the most effective up here because of the weather issues. It's obviously not the same as it would be on Long Island or in any of the other sections, maybe a little lower in the, you know, a little bit lower in New York. But it is one of those things that you look at and you think, wow, they're playing on all days that end in Y. But it just means more football, and I'm sure it's going to be super weird to get out there on a Tuesday night and shoot a game, but I'm still very much looking forward to being out there.
Yeah, certainly. That seems like a very, you know, condensed schedule, but, you know, back at my last job in Minnesota, I actually saw worse. The way they did it at the end of the season into playoffs, they would play on Friday, they would play their last game of the regular season on Wednesday, just 5 days off. They'd be back for playoffs on Tuesday, and then they would play on Saturday. So you basically had like 4 games in basically just over 3 weeks of time. So it was crazy. They somehow got it done. No real injuries. You know, it was always a discussion whether or not that was actually the right thing for them to do. But it didn't really go too poorly into the postseason. So it can be done. It'll be interesting to see how things shape out this year here in Section 5. But certainly, I think the players, they'd probably play every single game, every single day if they were given the chance.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was what I was going to ask about injuries, and I'm glad to hear that that's not, you know, been a huge problem. These kids haven't played for 16 months, so, you know, there's obviously that added anxiety, but I think that that's why they want to build the first 5 weeks to be really about practice, just so these kids can get their bodies ready, get ready to play, get ready to hit, because if they were doing anything in the off season, it was just lifting.
Yeah, when I was out there at practice this week on Monday, they're very cognizant of stretching, you know, getting loose, especially in this cold weather. You know, the muscles are a little bit tighter there in the 30-degree weather, so it's good to see they're keeping an eye on that, and good to see that they're prepared for anything.
Well, we have to go back to the things that are happening right now, so let's get to our games of the week. AJ, what do you have?
Yeah, I took the layup in this one. Whenever you get Aquinas and McQuaid battling it out on the basketball court, battling it out on any court, you can pick this as your game of the week, and then this year is certainly no different. Aquinas coming in at 6-3. Their only losses this season to the Park School out of Buffalo. We've already mentioned how good of a team they are traditionally, and then a 4-point loss to Penfield, another good team. McQuaid 6-4, as we mentioned before, a tough loss to Leadership, but on Monday, the biggest win of the Section 5 season, arguably, they beat East in overtime, 76-74. These teams already met earlier this season. Aquinas coming out with the win. That was a great battle. McQuaid trying to come back in that one, just couldn't make the comeback complete. So you know that they're going to be looking for redemption after their great win against East. That's going to be a great one to watch, and then certainly, you know, it's always just a great game when those teams play. So I'm excited to watch that one tomorrow.
It's a rivalry for the ages. Now we're going to take a look at 2 teams that are battling it out again as well. Irondequoit and Notre Dame Batavia ice hockey. This is Saturday at 7 p.m. at Lakeshore. So these teams met earlier in the season, and Notre Dame Batavia won 2-1. That's the only loss that the Eagles have. So obviously they're going to really fight for that, make sure that it's not they do not drop to 8-2. and they are on home ice. They will have 2 spectators per person. Lakeshore can get really loud, so I'm really interested to see how this one shapes up, because honestly, that is anybody's game.
Yeah, Notre Dame, Batavia right at the top of that Class A bracket. We already mentioned Irondequoit in Class B, so that'll definitely be a good one to watch as Notre Dame, Batavia. They've had some good wins this season. I think in the playoffs we'll truly see if they are for real, you know, against the Victors, the Penfields of the world. But certainly if they can beat Irondequoit again for the 2nd time, I think you've got to circle them as definitely a team to watch come playoff time next week.
They certainly know how to score, and that is where we will end it. There is no show next week. We'll be out covering as many sectional games as possible.
It'll be a good one. Be sure to tune in next week. Coverage on RochesterFirst.com and right here on News 8 for all your playoff action, and on social media as well. That's all the time we have for today. For Alexa Ross, I am AJ Fellman. We will see you back soon. Enjoy all the playoff coverage.
Follow News 8 wherever you are on RochesterFirst.com, Facebook, Twitter, and our apps for both news and weather.